A new dawn, the fall of Assad and the rise of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Bashar al-Assad's rule has ended. After 13 years of brutal civil war, the Syrian dictator's grip on power has been shattered. And in his place, a new power has risen from the ashes, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. HTS, an Islamist rebel group with roots in al-Qaeda, led the final offensive that toppled Assad. Their victory marks a turning point in the Syrian conflict, but it also raises profound questions about the country's future. HTS's rise to power is a complex and controversial story. The group was formerly part of the al-Qaeda network, a fact that continues to cause international concern. However, HTS has distanced itself from its former allies in recent years. Under the leadership of Abu Muhammad al-Julani, formerly known as Ahmed al-Shara, HTS claims to have adopted a more moderate stance. Al-Shara has publicly renounced ties with al-Qaeda and pledged to establish an inclusive government in Syria. He has also vowed to respect minority rights and uphold basic freedoms. Despite these assurances, skepticism about HTS's true intentions runs deep. The group's past association with al-Qaeda has left an indelible mark, raising fears of a new era of extremism in Syria. The international community has viewed HTS's rise with a mixture of caution and pragmatism. The United States, while still classifying HTS as a terrorist organization, has acknowledged direct contact with the group. This contact has focused primarily on the case of Austin Tice, the American journalist missing in Syria since 2012. This unprecedented communication highlights the complex reality on the ground, where former enemies are now forced to engage with a new power broker. The world reacts. International responses and concerns. The international community has responded to the dramatic events in Syria with a flurry of diplomatic activity. A series of high-level talks have taken place, aiming to shape the path forward for the war-torn nation. Arab states, Turkey and European powers met in Jordan to discuss the way ahead. Their focus was on supporting a peaceful transition, promoting inclusive governance and preventing the resurgence of terrorist groups. However, these talks were overshadowed by some notable absences. HTS itself was not present at the negotiating table. Syria, under its new leadership, was also absent, along with key regional players like Iran and Russia. This absence underscores the deep divisions that still exist within the region and the challenges in formulating a united international response. World leaders have echoed concerns about Syria's future. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned of the potential for new conflicts in the fragile post-Assad era. He called for restraint and urged all parties to prioritize the well-being of the Syrian people. Meanwhile, the Iraqi and Turkish foreign ministers stressed the importance of avoiding the chaos that engulfed Libya after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. They emphasized the need to preserve and reform existing Syrian institutions to ensure continuity and stability. Adding to regional anxieties, Israel continued its airstrikes on targets inside Syria. These strikes, targeting perceived threats from Iranian-backed groups, drew condemnation from the United Nations and raised fears of a wider escalation. Israel's continued military actions highlight the volatile security situation in the region and the potential for the Syrian conflict to spill over its borders. The road ahead, challenges and opportunities in a post-Assad Syria. Syria now faces the daunting task of rebuilding after more than a decade of devastating war. The challenges are immense, and the road ahead is fraught with uncertainty. HTS, despite its claims of moderation, remains an unknown quantity. The group's ability to govern effectively, guarantee minority rights, and deliver on its promises of freedom and justice remains to be seen. One of the most pressing challenges facing HTS is the question of governance. The group will have to grapple with the complex task of establishing a functioning state apparatus in a country ravaged by war and deeply divided along sectarian lines. HTS will also need to address the concerns of the international community, which remains apprehensive about the group's Islamist ideology and past links to terrorism. Another major challenge is the presence of other armed groups within Syria. HTS is not the only actor on the ground, and the potential for renewed conflict between rival factions remains high. The group will have to find a way to either accommodate these groups or confront them, to consolidate its power and prevent a return to chaos. Despite the enormous challenges, the end of Assad's rule also represents a glimmer of hope for Syria. The country has an opportunity, however slim, to break free from its authoritarian past and build a more democratic future. The international community has a vital role to play in supporting a peaceful transition and assisting in the reconstruction of a war-torn nation. An uncertain future, hopes and fears for freedom and democracy. Syria's future hangs in the balance. The fall of Bashar al-Assad has created an unprecedented opportunity for change, but it has also unleashed a wave of uncertainty and anxiety. The international community watches anxiously, hoping for the best, but bracing for the worst. The Syrian people, who have endured unimaginable suffering during the long years of war, now yearn for peace, stability, and a chance to rebuild their shattered lives. They have paid a heavy price for their aspirations for freedom and democracy. The question now is whether their sacrifices will ultimately be rewarded. The coming months and years will be crucial for Syria. The world will be watching closely to see how HTS governs, whether it honors its commitments to human rights and inclusivity, and whether it fulfills its promises of a brighter future. The stakes could not be higher for Syria and for the region as a whole. The Syrian people deserve a chance to live in peace and dignity. The international community has a moral obligation to do everything in its power to support their aspirations and help them build a better future. The road ahead will be long and arduous, but the pursuit of freedom and democracy is a goal worth fighting for.